If any business does not innovate or change or improve, eventually it's going to die.
Welcome to the fourth ranked strategic planning podcast, the Measure Success Podcast, where we talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. If you haven't heard or been following, please take a look at our website at 40strategy.com or 40accounting.com. You will see on there our 40 strategy workshop where we have bring in 40 business owners to our events to get experts to not only hear how they're revolutionizing and changing so it could grow in 2026 and beyond, but also to meet with them individually. To learn more about that, go to 40strategy.com. We're excited to have with us Ashish Gupta. He's the founder and CEO of ScaleUp Exec, a fractional COO firm that helps small to mid-sized companies accelerate growth and improve execution. He's been a part of 20 of these business transformations that under his belt. He learned quite a bit being within Qualcomm and Apple and other large companies. Ashish, welcome to the Measure Success Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Carl. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm always curious, like in an interesting story, and maybe you could think of like one specific story where you got called in and things were a mess, right? Things were a mess at a particular company. And give us, obviously I don't want details of names and people, if that makes sense, but give more of the insight of what type of session did you walk into and where was it heading before you got there?
Like I mentioned, or actually, like you mentioned, I've been in a bunch of different scenarios in businesses, now over 20 businesses. A few of them I've actually started myself, and a few that I've joined in on a fractional basis. So I could actually talk about one of the last companies that I had personally acquired. It was a distressed e-commerce business. So meaning for the 2 years prior to me joining, it had been on a decline. It was an interesting niche. It was in a snack and beauty space. That was a subscription business. And when I joined, it was a challenging place. Normally, when you buy a business, you try and look for everything is going in an interesting trajectory. There's already a good baseline in place. And this was the first time I had actually gone through and acquired a business personally. So maybe I didn't do all the right due diligence that I thought I did. But it's actually an interesting point that when you acquire a business, it's rare that all the numbers that you had seen beforehand are actually the reality when you get in afterwards. And there's also the cultural aspects that what you can't see behind the curtain, eventually once you uncover it, it's usually a lot more difficult than you'd ever expected. So this was a business where the team, there was a team that already came with the company when I acquired it, and that team had gotten into a culture of copy pasting month over month. What they did last month was what they did this month, and there was no innovation, no new ideas or new ways of doing things. I often feel that if today I'm doing something exactly as I was doing a year ago, I probably missed out on some opportunities for efficiency or improvement. And in this case, it's almost an analogy now I've seen again and again that if any business does not innovate or change or improve, eventually it's going to die. And that's what was happening in the case of this business, is that there was no innovation and it was on the trajectory of dying. And so when I joined, one of the first mistakes that I made was I said, forget about the revenues and trying to turn around the revenues. I wanted to work with a team and see if I could change the culture from being this copy paste culture to being one where people actually think innovatively, try and look for getting back on a trajectory of growth. And I spent a year and a half, very painful year and a half with the existing team trying to change the culture. And eventually I realized this is not what they'd signed up for when they first got into this job. They had actually, most of them had signed up for a lifestyle business, one that supported their own personal life. And that's okay. That's what they had originally signed up for. And that's not what I wanted or what I felt was needed to turn a company around. And it was almost like talking to a wall, when talking to these different team members, and it was emotionally taxing and draining for me to work through this scenario where I really wanted the company to get into the right trajectory, and I was trying to see if I could upskill and change the mindset of some of the team members, but then I eventually realized I was doing a disservice to them because that's not what they wanted. So eventually, after a year and a half, I made the very painful decision of letting go of 95% of the team and going back and resetting the culture, and then now hiring a new team with this new culture right from the get-go. So even during the interview process, they knew what they were getting into and what they were signing up for. And eventually, when I did that, that completely changed the trajectory of the business. And then I was thinking, why didn't I do this in month number one? Why did I suffer through a year and a half? And not just me suffer, but even the team. They suffered because they realized that they weren't able to do what I wanted, and it was no longer a company that was suitable for what they had desired for their own life.
I think that's super fascinating. It's amazing how many times I've been in turnarounds too that when you get acquired, I think it's missed often when people have an investor and acquired that there is an expectation by that new acquisition. They're not doing this for fun.
Hmm.
Right? Meaning they have put real money, whether it's there personally or other people that they've gathered investment funds from, and they expect to get a return in 3 to 5 years, right, from that investment. And so therefore, right, you have to change what you're doing. Like what I said, if you haven't changed in something you've done in the past year, you're gonna have to change it going forward, right? You're gonna have to
Hmm.
change and move forward to the right things. And when people don't change, it's really clear. It is interesting you looking back now that, you wish you would have made changes earlier with the team. And it's fascinating. You changed 95% of the team. And I've seen similar types of changes. You mentioned how painful it was. Tell us about that for a minute, because just let me just stop there. You tell me why you waited so long and why was it painful for them as they were going through it?
I waited so long because I felt like I wanted to do the right thing for the team. And I'd often heard beforehand that for many different scenarios in many different businesses, that uh, team is always number one. If you take care of the team, then everything else works out. And actually, this experience had led me to realize that that's not true. Actually, the business is number one. If the business is not doing well, it can't take care of the team. And if the business is doing well, everything changes for everybody in the team. And the team should be a close second. It shouldn't be a far distant second, but it should be a close second. So first, you have to do what's necessary. And sometimes there's a lot of difficult decisions you have to make because that's necessary for the team, for the company. So first, you have to take care of the company, and if you do that, then everything can flow well into how you can take care of the team.
So I'm curious, when you went to hire this new personnel that you had, what type of characteristics were you looking for to have the right type of culture to change and grow for the future?
Yeah. So one is that they're people who think. They're not just people who are given direction and they execute on that direction. And I feel like now, as time has gone on, the market landscapes are changing so fast. The competitive landscapes are changing so fast. Even customer needs are changing so fast. So it's imperative that everybody in a team is always aware of what's happening around them, not just within their company, but the impact external factors have on their company. And they're able to think, okay, what impact does that have for us? What can I change in the way that I operate? How can I think of doing things differently? How can I provide a better service for customers? How can I provide a different service for customers? So people in the company that can think for themselves and then come up with ideas that are relevant and even take the first, second, third level of action on that, and then finally come to their manager and say, okay, by the way, I noticed this in the market. This is how it impacts us. Here's an idea that I have. I actually thought through it for the first, second, third level of detail. And what do you think? So that's the type of mindset that I wanted in teams. I didn't want a team that the leaders think of everything and then tell the team what to do, and now they just execute and then that's it. So I think everybody in the team has to be able to have some level of independent, initiative-driven thinking.
And so let me go a step further on that. How do you discern that in an interview process that they are people who question, they are people who think, and they are people who are willing to change? Like, how did you discern that from the interview process?
Yeah, I've actually spent a lot of time developing interesting interview processes because I realized that most typical, like even when I was at Apple and I'd hired a lot of people for my own team and helped recruit for other teams as well. Even their hiring process I felt was pretty weak. Actually, it often relies on, oh, here you've worked in Google before, great, that's nice. Then you're probably a good candidate for us, And it doesn't necessarily think through not just what's written on paper but how people process, how they analyze situations, and how they think through them. And so I've got kind of an extensive process. I could get into that if you'd like, of how I interview, and kind of weed out and eventually have fewer number of people I have to interview, but I get a lot of the data beforehand. But one of the questions I like to ask when you eventually get to a final interview with somebody is you look back at some of their past, like let's say their past one or two jobs or roles that they've had, and ask them what their biggest accomplishment was in that role. So they might tell you, okay, my biggest accomplishment was I generated 20 leads per month through a new cold email campaign that I initiated. So if that was their biggest accomplishment, now you dive into the next level of detail. Okay, what kind of infrastructure did you use for that cold email setup? And then you, from the answer they give, you'll start understanding what level of depth they get onto. Then you choose one item within that, what they say, and then get to the next level of depth in that. So you really like get into the second, third level of detail to see how much depth did they actually go into in accomplishing, in getting them to accomplish that goal. And do they really understand the details or the nitty gritty of that area? And how much of that accomplishment was due to their work versus somebody else in the company contributing or helping them with that. So I think that, and also just asking them what they felt was the biggest accomplishment. It'll help you get a gauge of what they think is a big deal versus not a big deal. So I think that's a really fascinating question, especially if you dive into the second and third level of detail, because it'll help you understand from real practical work that they've done in the past, how much depth they go into things. And I often find if somebody goes into a lot of depth in an activity that they perform, then they're probably going to be thinking a lot through that whole process. They're probably going to be analyzing, probably coming up with some interesting ways of doing things through that. And you'll uncover that if you ask this question in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you for going through that. So I'm curious, you've been, you said, over 20 different business transformations. If you were to say people, process, or systems is the most important thing to change, what would you say of those three is the most important?
People, process, or systems. Interesting. I think I usually like to start first at a high level, and usually the high level is not the people. Usually the high level is the system. And so let's say if you let's take a marketing example. So if you want to now expand your customer base, and to do that, you want to first understand who's your relevant ICP, the standard term in ideal customer profile. Who's a relevant ICP? Then where do they hang out, whether online or offline mechanisms? And now how do I reach them in those places that they hang out? Maybe they hang out a lot on email, or maybe they hang out a lot on Reddit, or maybe they hang out on highways where there's a lot of billboards or whatever else. So now what are the mediums that I'm going to use to reach out to them in from the places that they hang out? Now I'll probably come up with like 3 or 4 tests based on my hypotheses. I think they hang out on highways. I think they hang out on Reddit. I'm going to do a 2 month long test on for billboards on highways, and I'm going to do a 2 month long test with specific KPIs in place and blah blah blah. Now next, I'm going to think through who are the people that will have the right skill sets to help me execute on each of these tests. So yeah, it started with that system, and then now the different processes. So whether it's through cold email or billboards or whatever other mechanism, and then now who are the right set of people that are going to help me execute on that with skill and with innovation and with depth in their thinking.
Yeah, good, good. No, I appreciate you describing that system oriented type process. Right, it's always interesting, like where people go towards. Now, when you mentioned, is that typically what you see? The problem is on the system side because people don't have a system, and so that's why you end up going towards there.
Problems can be all over the place. You might actually
Hmm.
have a great system and process, but then the people, maybe the wrong set of people for
Hmm.
helping execute on that. You might be on the process level, there might be issues. Maybe you're doing a bunch of things in manual ways when it could be done in semi-automated ways, or maybe system level thinking is not there. You're actually thinking about details instead of the overall strategy first. So business in business, you can have issues everywhere. So it's actually good to uncover first, where do you have that issue, and then you start tackling that.
Sure. How do you, from a cultural standpoint, you already mentioned about the one significant transformation of teams that you had, but when you're going in and looking at a company, how do you get that buy-in alignment of that you need to go to a new direction and let's get all in the same pathway so we're going there?
Yeah. Firstly, I rarely like to have a one size fits all answer to things. I've realized that it's more important to understand the context of a business and then figure out what is the relevant way of approaching that context. So in some businesses that we're working on, they already are on an interesting trajectory. They have interesting team in place that are going in the right place, and maybe there's some cracks that are showing up that need to be adjusted. It may not require a cultural change. It might require incremental changes. And so there, the way that you get buy-in is going to be very different versus, like, for example, one of the companies that we're now in the tail end of helping, we've been working with them for the last 14 months. When we joined them, they were on the verge of bankruptcy and they were losing 350K a month for the prior 18 months before we joined. And they're about a 20 million a year construction business. In that case, the CEO didn't have the thought pattern or the guts to take some of the decisions that were needed. And so when we came in, we had to do some dramatic changes because that's what was needed for that business. So in that case, your process of getting buy-in from everybody is going to be much shorter, and you're going to be making decisions that many people may not be happy with, but you know are going to be needed. So that's a very different scenario versus that first one when I said where you actually will be trying to understand the current culture of the company, how people think, what motivates them, what their eventual goals are, and then bit by bit you might implement incremental changes that everybody can see the wins from, and then that builds trust over time, and then now you can expand as you build trust. But in the second scenario, you might have to make dramatic changes without getting everybody's buy-in. You want to make sure you're aligned with the CEO, and then you do what's needed, and you might have to do it very fast, like within a few weeks of even joining. And by the way, in that case, we were able to get them to net zero in 3 months and profitable in month 4, and month 14 to a successful exit.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a wonderful turnaround to be able to get there, get so quickly, get towards that process behind it. So now moving forward, I'm kind of curious of you. What trends are you seeing right now that maybe perhaps it's well, here we'll hit the question everybody's asking: AI, right? That's the easy button. But you see AI being done well, and then you see AI not being done well, right? In terms of implementation. What are you seeing with the businesses that you're working with, and how you had to implement technology and adopting it in a way that's actually adding value to the companies you're working with?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. One of our customers is a multi-location medical practice. They're in the mental health space, and they've got a bunch of locations around New York and New Jersey. And we're operating as a fractional COO. So when we joined, we realized that the CEO had found many cool tools and turned them on in the company, and was paying for them. But actually, nobody in the company was bought into them. They were having minimal impact, and yeah, but people actually felt that it was not relevant. They didn't even know how to use it, and then they were actually a bit opposed to those tools because they just didn't understand them, and they thought it might encroach into their work in some way or the other. And so in that case, we first understood what is the point of this tool? Is there actually any benefit from it? What is the resistance that the team members have to it? What are the pain points that they're observing? A lot of it was in terms of them just not understanding or being trained on it, and then the right system and process was not thought through. So in this case, actually going back to your point on system, process, and team. So in this case, all of the pieces were broken. Like they hadn't
Hmm.
actually thought through, well, what is the real issue in the business? And how do we solve that issue? Is this software going to help us solve that issue? In that case, it turned out actually it could help it. There was a whole billing issue where there's a bunch of revenue that was in collection. This is for collections. So they had a whole bunch of clients that hadn't paid. And so there's this massive amount of revenue that could have been collected, but wasn't because the right process and systems and people weren't in place. And so once we understood the business problem and that there was a real need, then we found that, okay, the software actually could be interesting to help solve that. So now let's work with the team to see, can we get their buy-in in figuring out how to implement this, mold it into their workflows, and then get their like we had to adjust some of their workflows, but they were now all part of the whole process of allowing the software to become part of their daily activities. And we put in the right KPIs and dashboards, and then we had a little quick wins along the way that actually showed how the software could help their own work. And eventually, it was really interesting. Like it ended up within the first month or two, we brought in 5K of extra revenue into the business. Sorry, 5 figures worth of revenue into the business that otherwise was going to go into being written off. And the team was actually happy for having this new software that was helping them and making their lives easier. And they saw the actual results and the impact on the business. So once you start pulling all the pieces together, starting first from the strategy, what's really needed, then getting into the tools that will help you support that strategy, and then getting the people bought in and part of the whole solution implementation.
Thank you. I think that's a really good, and I really appreciate how you look at each opportunity differently, right? And you learn from it. I think that's one of the, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best examples of a great consultant is that they understand that each entity is its own unique animal, and you have to understand that and address it and understand, even you can have two companies in the same industry in a block apart and they could be wildly different, based on the makeup of that, connecting to who are the real clients actually are. And so I appreciate you taking that unique, really learning what's happening to solve it. I think that is really valuable. So when you are working with your clients, how do you measure success?
Again, that's a depends uh, answer, but in many of them, it's very much KPI driven. We've got different dashboards and scorecards, and okay, here's the goals that we wanted to go after. Here's where we are right now, and how we're tracking towards those goals. But in other situations, it's actually our COO work is much more soft skills.
Hmm.
It's often like, for example, when we join most businesses, we first try and unravel what is it that the CEO or founder. We mostly work with small, medium-sized businesses, so we're dealing a lot with founders and who are CEOs. So we first try and unravel what is it that they really want. And first question that pretty much first answer pretty much every CEO says, "Oh, I want to grow my business." But then we try and unravel that. Why do they want to grow, and what do they want to grow to? Let's say they're 5 million a year right now. Is 6 million enough for them to be happy? Is 7 million enough for them to be happy? Is 20 million enough for them to have like? And why would that be a, a definition of happiness for them? What is 20 million giving them, or 7 million giving them instead of 6 million? Is there something in their life that they're looking for? Is there something, so really try and uncover. And then we often realize actually 70% of business owners, they don't really want to grow their business. They're happy if it stays stable and it gives them a cash flow that sustains their lifestyle. That actually would give them contentment and happiness. And maybe some of them actually are not so much interested in dollars. We realize that they're actually more interested in the lifestyle that it affords them. Or maybe they want to shift into more of an advisory role rather than being hands on, stuck in daily operations. And that's what would give them contentment. So most of the time, we actually realize it's really the situation and how their personal life and business life interact is what they're looking for, rather than, oh, here's a dollar number that's going to all of a sudden make me content. So I think if that once we unravel that, now everything else flows from that. So in many cases, it might be that we try and install a leadership team that can keep the business running and keep it going, not just in flatline, but in interesting ways, without the deep involvement of the CEO. And that's what would be a measure of success. So yeah, that this it's a depends is my answer.
I think that's appropriate. I really do. I really think that's I love it how, it is. Different people have different goals. Some people want to create $1 billion business from scratch, so to speak. They have this really big, exciting thing, and then other people are like, "Hey, I want an oil well. I want a certain amount of cash flow that's coming out of the business, and I don't want to be involved in the day to day. I want to be the owner shareholder of it." And other people are like, "No, I want to be fully in the business." It's very different, and I do agree matching that up appropriately to understand is valuable, behind the process, because everybody does measure success differently. At the end of the day, it is interesting. Like the end point, I think is important because, you know, if people are planning to quote unquote retire, right? What is their number? Right. That's a thing too. That's not always broken up. It's like, what retirement number do you need? Do you need 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the number is. What matters is that they're actually doing things that are going to get them to that outcome, right? But we also know that money isn't everything. That's not always the why behind the why. People are driving towards things, and so you can connect all of them. I think that's really well. So you are clearly a busy person working with CEO role as a fun role. I've been in a similar type roles throughout my career, and How do you keep what habits do you do yourself to handle all, the stress and working with your other team members who are working through these things? What do you do on a regular basis to make sure you're providing your best leadership?
Mhm. I have a deep interest in spirituality, and I often find that the intersection between spirituality and business, it's like one and the same. One supports the other supports the other. And like for example, I spend a lot of time trying to contemplate on, especially around my reactions. And reactions, I think, are one of the most challenging parts of life that make everything much more difficult. So if there's a tough situation you're working through in a business or with a person, uh, and if I have a reactionary or emotions that come out when trying to solve or work through some of that, then it just makes all the decision making much more difficult. So I spend a lot of time like trying to uh, get more equanimous in the mind. And so even if I'm working through a tough situation, then I first try and center inside. And I often find it's easier to gain stability from focusing internally rather than pitching your stability on something external. So I try and spend a lot of time just being much more centered and grounded from internal focus. And then now approaching a problem with once I feel like I'm in a stable place. If I feel like I'm in an unstable place and then I try and solve a problem, then I may not come up with the best decision, or it may take much longer to get to the best decision. So you can shortcut a lot of stuff by just coming from the right foundation of approaching a problem.
Yeah, good, good. No, thank you for describing that. So, how do you measure success in your personal life?
It's kind of interesting. I used to have a lot of goals in the past. Ever since I was like 15, 16, I had all these goals for what I'm going to achieve by X age and Y age, and then do all these different things. And many of them actually came worked out, and many of them didn't. So it was kind of a mix. And I remember through that whole process, I'd have a lot of ups and downs. Like, oh, this worked out great. Oh, this didn't work out. Oh, bummer. So I'd have like a lot of ups and downs and emotional impacts, from those goals. So I'm actually experimenting right now to have no goals. I don't tell my businesses that, but for myself, I'm trying instead of having no goals, but being very present and trying to do
Mm,
my absolute best every moment. So not worrying about the future or where that's going to go, but instead really trying to be present and bringing my fullest best self at the moment, rather than feeling anxiety that, oh, why isn't this happening, or feeling elation that, oh, this happened. So instead just trying to be really my best. So that no goals at the moment.
that's profound. That is definitely a profound piece of being present in the moment and giving your all right while you're in it. To truly experiencing it. I think it's hard for a lot of us. We're living in the past, right? And we have our emotions and thoughts and frustrations or joy about things in the past, and then sometimes we're so concerned about the future we forget about the present state of where we are today, right? And the neat thing is when you really get into Welch, you can find that peace. Now, sometimes it's still scary when you're in the moment, when you really realize how big perhaps something you're dealing with, right? And how to stay poised during all that. But I think that's really neat, special, really, truly, because that's not a common goal what you just described, which wasn't a goal, as you said, you're backing that up.
Yep.
So I'm curious, what is a book that you're commonly recommending to other people?
Firstly, I don't read too much. And pretty much all the things I read are around mind and like working through the mind and spiritual topics. So I don't read too much. And I actually instead like to prefer to spend my time just introspecting, because there's so much to read inside of me. Like there's so many good, bad, and ugly inside of me. And try and read that instead of reading a bunch of external things. Actually, I found in the past I used to read a bunch of things. And that helps just build a bunch of knowledge, like intellectual knowledge. But it often digresses from like understanding yourself. Like, that point that I made about really unraveling what a CEO really wants, or a founder
Mm,
really wants. Many CEO founders have never done that work of just reading themselves and really trying to understand themselves, and then now building their life around that. So I often find, instead of focusing so much on external, right now I'm kind of in that phase of being interested in focusing inside and reading inside, and like just understanding what exists inside of me. There's so much stuff in there, so much clutter, and Yeah. So understand that first.
Ashish, how can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
I do post on my LinkedIn. I've been posting. I paused a little bit for the last few months, but I posted quite a bit of my thoughts on entrepreneurship and leadership, and how I think through things. And also on our website scaleupexec.com, you can actually book time directly with me, even if you're not necessarily looking for a COO, but you're just interested in bouncing some ideas off for your business. I'm happy to be a sounding board, so you can actually book time directly with me there as well.
Wonderful. I just want to thank you so much for being a guest on the Measure Success podcast today.
Really enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
To everyone else who's listening, I've hoping you enjoyed this conversation. It's always a joy to talk with successful business people who have, in this particular case, where 20 different turnarounds, been involved with large companies and small companies. That is really challenging. Most people typically stay up the big company or typically stay up the small company, but be able to apply it from that small to mid-sized company, that's where there's a lot of joy, and you can really create so much value for these founders and entrepreneurs that are trying to develop something different than they originally thought when they got in, right? And we sometimes miss that point. And so people contacting people like Ashish to help you get to that next level, I highly encourage that. As we always like to say, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.